Hello, welcome to the AP7 podcast. You are here with Rachel Donovan and the founder of AP7, Mr. George Helou.
Thanks, Rachel, and thank you for joining us. We love talking about how to get the heart into everything we do to get a lot out of life.
Whether it be relationships, business, careers, you name it. So, let's get started. Hey, George, how are you going today?
I am doing very well, thank you.
Yeah?
Yeah, I'm not stressed.
So we're the opposite.
Even though I've got a lot
stressed.
on, a lot to do, I'm just taking it in my stride.
Yeah.
What about
I know we're
you?
not about to talk about it. Well, I know I feel very stressed at the moment.
Do you?
Yeah, I do.
Is that because of your studies?
Studies and work, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to de-stress at the time and things are happening, but it can be hard sometimes when you're feeling a lot of pressure.
Well, you know what to do. Deep breathe.
Yeah.
And just surrender into the moment.
Yeah.
But we're not talking about stress this
Well, I was going to
podcast,
say,
are we?
well, talking about stressful situations, because this could be the cause of a lot of stress, and that's parenting.
Yes. Parenting. And one of our biggest desires we seem to have is our heart yearns to have children, and that we love the idea of being able to raise these innocent little babies, young'uns, and help them become adults. And what do we all want for our children? We want them to make the best of this life. We all seem to want the same thing. And we know that because our parents wanted the same thing as well. So parenting, but it's hard. Every time you hear someone, being a parent, they have a lot of stories about how hard it is. And I know personally, and my wife as well, like it hasn't been easy, but it's been rewarding. And so it's a real mixed bag being a parent.
Yeah. That sounds pretty common, that sort of feeling and observation about it being, I think it's a full-time job. It's challenging, but people still have children and don't stop. So it's obviously a very rewarding thing. And I don't have any children, so I can't relate to that feeling of all those issues being worthwhile. But I look forward to that one day.
Yeah. The one thing that seems to be recurring as an issue is balance, the struggle for how do you discipline and how do you nurture and love a child. And what I find personally is that depending on how we were raised, we seem to lean more one way or the other. We seem to be either too soft or too hard. And then you've got this bad cop, good cop parenting thing going on. And then children learn to play that parents off each other. In other words, they'll go to the weakest link to get what they want. And then the hardest link will fuss about it and create drama for being undermined.
George, what do you fall under? Are you the good cop or bad cop?
I'm the funny bad cop. In other words, I'm very lighthearted and I don't take things too seriously, but I'm very clear about what is a way to be and what isn't. And I'm not afraid to be very assertive and to cut the rewards out of the equation if someone's not towing the line. It's funny.
And do you?
I only have one child and I'm talking about it generically when obviously I'm a dad and I'm talking about my daughter. Anyway, we have to protect the innocent. We have to protect the innocent. Go on.
True. So before you became a parent or when you knew you were about to become one, did you have certain ideas of the parenting you thought you'd be carrying out and then find that a lot of that sort of changed?
Yeah, it's not about the change. It's about you realize that you can't imagine what buttons are going to be pushed until they're pushed. Before you become a parent, you have all these ideals in your head of how it's going to play out. And any issues that you may be told about, like when they get into teenage the teenage years and how that, they're hormonal and all over the place and the terrible twos. You hear these things, but you have no concept of how they're going to affect you emotionally. So you just accept it because, as you were saying, there's several billion people that have been born. So obviously we keep having babies. It can't be that bad, right? So you just go with that, But then when you're in it and your buttons are being pushed, you start to get emotional, and that starts to get in the way with the kind of parent you want to be. You end up thinking, I didn't want to be that angry, or I didn't want to be that overreactive. So you end up realizing it's not easy and that you have to work on yourself and really start to discipline yourself because you want to set an example and you want to be as fair, as balanced, as centered as you want to be for your children so that you're giving them the best of both worlds. The world of love and passion and a depth of security, inner security for a child. You want to give them that, don't you? Every parent wants to give them that, And those that think that's a bad idea are actually mentally sick, to be honest. Any parent who thinks being tough and abusive because they're being petulant and belligerent and they just need to be pushed down and controlled, all they're doing is paying forward how they were traumatized, the way they were raised, and they're paying it forward. And to me, at the best of times, I say we are all mentally retarded humanity. But for me, definitely being a parent like that is so unhealthy. And I get very sensitive around our precious children and how innocent they are, impressionable, sensitive. And I obviously want us to be really good parents. I really want all of us to work with each other to be great parents because, man, the damage that gets done to our self-esteem and even to the way we relate to the world. And that's not to say that, we're meant to be perfect parents. No, that's probably never going to happen. But you know what's interesting? If you as a parent don't try to be perfect and don't take yourself too seriously, it means when you make a mistake, you handle it gracefully in front of the child. When the child makes a mistake, the way you engage them doesn't make them feel inadequate. So it's less about perfection and more about being grounded in what matters and allowing yourself to relate to your child in that way. But these extremes are so popular and it makes you wonder, with so much riding on us improving as parents, given that our children are the most precious to us, I don't see that much commitment amongst parents working with each other to be better parents.
Do you mean that in reference to people being very judgmental these days because on social media now there's all articles and people commenting about things down to breastfeeding in public and smacking children and vaccinations? There's so many comments and commentary on parenting. Do you think that makes it harder now?
There is, and I think you're right. It makes it harder. Why? If you take both extremes points of view, they are vicious upon one another. You'll take the liberal, never touch a child, never hit them, right? And to be honest, I don't believe in hitting children, right? I don't think it ever has to be the answer. But what happens is you get one extreme and the other extreme says, my goodness, you're just going to let a child get away with blue murder and grow up thinking there are no consequences to behaving badly. You're creating the problem of what this world is already struggling with. You're creating more of that into our future. So can you see why it gets so heated? And then on the other side is these guys on the other side would look at those sorts of parents and go, you're the abusive parents that traumatize children so that they grow up and they don't even have confidence in themselves. You see what I mean? Actually, I wrote a blog article, didn't I, recently? And I think we should refer to it. I'm trying to remember what I called it. Do you remember what
We'll put it in the show notes. I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. All right. we're very judgmental on each other. And so what happens is we're too afraid to share. We're too afraid to open up because we expect to be attacked. And also there's this preciousness around your right to be a parent, the way you want to be a parent. They're your children. You can do it. It's like, well, yes, but there needs to be balance in that. You know, at what point aren't you supposed to be open-minded to learning to be a better parent? And at what point are you thinking that whatever you do is meant to be only your business? I mean, this is your child, but they're not really your child at the end of the day. I love it how people say they're never your children. You have the privilege of caretaking while they're developing themselves, and you get to equip them with the best way to take on the world. But they then, the lease is finished and they move on and their own people. There should be no sense of ownership. It's almost unhealthy, isn't it? What do you think, Rach?
I think there's definitely a really strong sense of ownership when you've got a child. Very controlling, sort of, in a sense, sometimes, with very heavy opinions about what, the child should and shouldn't do. Even my mum was saying recently, and she's in her later part of life, and her mum still tells her what to do, and it drives her mad. But absolutely, in terms of you growing up to lead your own life and to make your own decisions, and that kind of healthy understanding and relationship, if that existed between parents and children, would be really great. Like, it'd be a really great environment to be around, and really beneficial in terms of becoming, more like a friendship as well, as opposed to someone owning the other and taking control.
Yeah, and look, the problem about some parents want to be too much friend. They want to be too friendly. And
well, that's, the balance on the other way.
Yeah, and if you're trying to be friends with your children, then every time you're in a situation where you need to be unpopular because they need to learn that the way they think they're allowed to be is destructive and it's going to hurt them later on in life, and you now need to be unpopular. But if you're too busy emotionally attached to needing to be their friend, you're going to be too soft, too amiable, and there's something in that really disturbs the child, I think. When a child senses that you're not as sure of yourself, and when they push, they don't see it, they don't get to experience a boundary of your dignity, that makes a child nervous because you're not strong and they need you to be strong.
Oh, interesting. That's so interesting.
And this is not even something that they're conscious of. It's just that the stronger you are, the safer they feel.
Yeah, wow. That's amazing. It makes so much sense when you say that. Because I've seen parents before where I always find it, I always find it quite hard commenting about parenting, not being one, because I'm not a parent. So I don't feel I have really a right to comment much on how people choose to parent their children when I don't do that. Yeah, but I think for the sort of parent that I would want to be would definitely be a parent with boundaries. I don't, in my opinion, see that having such soft parenting and, talking to the child so much, like, at the end of the day, I do feel you need to have, and I don't mean yelling and being abusive, but having an assertive line and boundaries and things like that is really, really important, because otherwise, I think it must be confusing for the child. Because they don't know any better. They're growing. It's, they don't know any better what's right or wrong, what's safe, what's not safe, what's okay and behavior-wise and things like that. They don't know. So unless you're there to establish that in a fair way, then it's harder for them.
It is. It's like you want your child to keep their imagination, and you want to instill in them the self-belief that they can create any life that they want. You want that, right? But the problem is, as a parent, there's only so much you've achieved in your life, and there's doubts you're grappling with about what's possible. So it's always a work in progress being a parent, because suddenly you have a child and now you're becoming aware of whether you're measuring up to pass on to the child what you want to versus where you're caught emotionally. And that's why I don't really judge parents And that's why I don't even judge myself. Like, in other words, I'm going to be the best dad I can be from moment to moment. And when I drop the ball, I'm going to go, well, I want to be better. I could have approached that with my daughter better. So sometimes I actually apologize to my daughter. I'll say to her, you know what, Holly, I think I should have been this way with you in that situation because it would have helped you to be more open to what I was saying, and you deserve that respect, and I want to be that kind of father.
Wow.
And what I observe with her, it's like she just goes into this interesting trance and she just absorbs what I've just said. And it's good for me to allow my daughter to witness that I'm comfortable in my own skin, that if I see that I can be better, I'm able to express that, right? Rather than, gee, I don't want to be that with my daughter anymore. I want to now run through the guilt and the resentment upon myself for being that way. And now I'll be irritable and then I'll be intolerable to be around. See what I mean? It doesn't work. If I'm going to be too hard on myself, I end up going to be unbearable to be around because things will get to me because I'm restless in my own skin. I'm not happy with who I am, right? So this is why you have to, as a parent, just embrace the fact that you're doing your best. And as long as you stay humble and open-minded with what else can improve me, that's enough. That's a good attitude to have, you know? And obviously we want the balance. You know, you want to be tough, but tough in a respectful, measured way that's more reasonable in proportion to what the issues are. Mm. And you want to be inspirational and generous and compassionate and patient because you want your child to feel like they're allowed to fall. They're allowed to make mistakes and not expect to be scolded, you know, for not having their act together already. But you know what's interesting? It's also how you relate to yourself in front of your children and how you relate to everybody else, because I can tell you everything we've said to our child has been reasonably wonderful and great, yet our child is very hard on herself. She's really perfectionistic. She wants to get things right yesterday. And she gets really emotional if she doesn't get something right quickly. And I've had to sit with this and go, where did this come from? And I know I have a past where I was too hard on myself. And I'm sure in context, I'm a work in progress with it. And I know that my wife has been too hard on herself. So we created an environment that, of course, our daughter would become a product of. But without us consciously wanting it for her, we passed it down to her. But here's the thing. Who's perfect? How do these children choose parents? How does a child end up with a mother and father? As far as I'm concerned, if you came into my life, it's your responsibility. In other words, I'm going to be the best I could be. But if you didn't get everything you thought you were going to get out of the equation, that's your responsibility because you're you and I'm me and I'm just doing the best I can. You with me? So, in other words, you've got to give yourself permission to have a journey. And if you do, I think that sets a better example for your children, doesn't it? It does.
With that, well, no, I'd say with that question, absolutely.
But yeah, I find that parents argue how to parent, but each one has a point of view that is about a journey to the middle where you're a better team. And so like if a parent's being too soft and the other one's feeling like you're making our child weak, and then if you're being too tough on the child and the other parent's going, you're traumatizing our child, you're making them weak, you see how we're both looking at the same problem from two lenses. But the bottom line is, and I go back to this over and over again, what is the balance? How do you decide it? And I think parents should get together and create almost like their own mandate, their own conduct of let's be this to the child. Let's create this environment. How about we have boundaries and we have this and we have that. And how about, but we show this level of compassion, and how about we agree that this is the tone in which we talk to our child and these are the consequences, and how do we scale them up? Or how do we get creative and innovative to look at what's causing problems for our child to get to root causes? Like, have a really healthy conversation. And the important thing is that if you're a team, if a mother and father are a team, parents are a team. I don't want to restrict it to mother and father. It could be, in this day and age, 2 fathers or 2 mothers, right? Mm-hmm. And actually, in many ways, there used to be cultures with almost tribes of parents that used to look after the children, you know? And for me personally, I was raised with a lot of parenting from my grandparents. And I used to have my grandmother Monday to Friday look out for me with my grandfather while my parents worked long hours. So I definitely know what it's like to have parental energy and guidance outside of just 2. So anyway, once you can become a real team, there's a consistency that's important for a child. Because if you are being one way for a child and then the double standard, you flip the script and now that's not good enough to be that way. Like, for example, if them nagging got them an ice cream, but the next time they nagged, they got scolded and punished. But then the next time they nagged with the right parent, they got the ice cream. But the next time they nagged, that same parent was in a bad mood and they scolded them and punished them. You see, a child starts to get traumatized because their environment is so inconsistent, so unpredictable, that one day you get rewarded and by the same rules, you get hit the next time, metaphorically and sometimes physically. So our children deserve consistency.
The consistency is really important. Yeah.
They deserve consistency. And it's hard because your moods can influence how you interpret your child. One day you're at peace with them making noise. Another time you're on edge, stuff is going through your mind, you're worried about something, and suddenly simple things are getting to you, and then you're overreacting. So it's not easy. You know, it really isn't easy, but you just got to be mindful of that's what you're trying to achieve. And every time you notice you're not achieving it, agree to call it on what it is. Just like I was saying before, I would apologize to my daughter. That's so important, to be transparent. I think that's, you know, it's the vulnerability, the power of that vulnerability is, what do you really want for your child at the end of the day? What do you really want for them? Do you want them to be so tough so that no one will take advantage of them, just like people had taken advantage of you, and you want them to be safer? Or do you want them to dream big and think they can achieve anything no matter what because you weren't allowed to? Because if you push only one way or the other, they'll live in fantasy land and fall hard, or they will second guess and overthink and never dream at all because you've made them too overprotective. So I guess for us, we want to have the balance of protection and growth because that's the world. The world has a lot of nastiness and a lot of problems, but it also has a lot of adventure and opportunity to have an incredible life. And if you want to truly prepare your child for that world, let them know how to discern, how to critically think what's going on in front of them. Let them know that things can go wrong and that's just a part of life. But let them also know that there are always solutions and they are designed to find them, so that they can have that sense of being grounded, that life is always about, you need to understand what you're dealing with, but you can always imagine what can be and create a better way and have a vision and invent and innovate in every aspect of your life. You want that. And unfortunately for us, we're normally skewed too much one way or the other. And we even have profiling, Rach. You're an introvert and you're good at admin, and you're a, extrovert and you're good at sales. But right, so that's me in a box. It's like, that's not what we want for our children. We want our children to realize that they are built to be flexible to the occasion. If they need to be concise and understand compliance and follow processes because it warrants it for that occasion, they can slip into that way of being and do it. But they can easily slip out and become proactive and creative and innovate. So we want that because we are designed to have both. So as a parent, I reckon if you create an environment that is rich in love, I think that has to be the focus, doesn't it? It has to be the focus. If you create an environment of love, that's where thriving can happen. But you can't have love without security. So in other words, a child needs to feel very secure. And it is your responsibility through consistency and the balance of parenting to make a child feel like you'll always be there for them. But when they choose to be something that is disrespectful, harmful to anyone, to anyone's property, that you are able to immediately engage them in a way to show them that the world has an opposite and equal reaction, right? So that you're helping them realize that there's a cliff, don't walk off it. There's a cliff, don't walk off it. If you don't give them a sense of knowing where the cliffs are, then they'll forever assume that there are cliffs everywhere and they don't know where they are, and they're going to be highly strung and anxious all the time. So give them a sense of what works and what doesn't in the world, but never take away from them their power to create a different environment and make life much better than what has been given to them in any situation. And I think that is the good balance, isn't it, Rach? To help them know what's really going on, but also keep them in touch with the fact that they can change any of it, and they can even leave an environment and create a different one if it doesn't meet their heart, what their heart wants, whether it's the way people are treating them or what they're achieving or whatever it is. Yeah. But I think, and I think this could be just my opinion, but I think when we're desperate as parents, when we're struggling, we end up clutching at coping mechanisms, and they end up being the wrong choices for how to parent our children.
So you think, is that why you'd have a plan or have ideas so to avoid having coping mechanisms? So you already know what you would do in situations, or?
Yeah, I think that would be a huge part of it, is to be clear about what you stand for, because then you're less likely to be pushed into situations that don't resonate with being that way. It's like dignity, being dignified as a parent, and how you want to parent. I also think that the coping mechanisms are more about your own insecurities and your own struggle. And I think that as you're about to bring a child in the world, or as you're raising one, I think looking in the mirror and starting to honor who you are is probably living by example of what you want your child to be doing for themselves. You see, the more you love what you're about and the more you're comfortable in your own skin, you won't have to worry about parenting. The way you carry yourself in front of your child is going to immerse them in what self-love looks like and what it takes to create beautiful connections with your fellow human beings, with nature, beyond that. So, yeah, I think if you want to be a really good parent, you got to honor yourself and work on you and what bothers you in life and how to move through that. Otherwise, you're trying to give to your child what you refuse to give to yourself. And that's hard. It's like you're trying to wing it. Like you're trying to clutch over to a higher level while you're in quicksand. It always will undermine you. And every time you are undermined, you witness yourself letting down your child because you weren't what you knew you wanted to be for your child. And then what are you supposed to do then? Beat yourself up and self-loathe that you're not a good parent? Well, then you're actually being a worse parent by showing your child you should be insecure and hard on yourself. So, yeah, I don't know whether I've helped people with with me just expressing my own raw thoughts on parenting from personal experience and overall with parents in coaching.
Absolutely. But also highlighting ideas that are important to be aware of as a parent.
Yeah.
So I'll make a mental note of this one for me in a few years.
Yeah, well, the podcast will exist and you never know, we might revisit this and get more specific on different situations when we're parenting. Yeah. Like, for example, I think boundaries is a big one.
Yeah.
Like that whole world of boundaries seems to be hard for people. Either they don't know what kind of boundaries to come up with, or it's hard to enforce them because they're nervous that they're being cruel to their child. But you know what's amazing about children, right, is that they will tantrum and they will cry because they don't like the boundary. But you actually have a choice to be comfortable in that and not mind their tantrum. And be comfortable that they're learning what the boundary is and you're doing a great job as a parent. But what's incredible is before their tears have dried on their cheeks, they're laughing with you about something else. And this is the beauty about children. You see, they move through their emotions quickly, and whatever's happening in front of them, they'll express it emotionally. And because we as parents are sensitive to what our children's needs are, we're unnecessarily panicking that they're not in a comfortable place. Well, let me tell you, them crying, them being upset, them being angry, it's nothing. It's fine. It's normal, right? That doesn't mean you act like a sociopath around them, like you don't care, but you definitely want to not take yourself on an emotional roller coaster on the inside, because if you stay steady, that also gives them the message that you're dignified and what you're saying is solid, you know?
Yeah.
And then before you know it, they're actually drawn to you, Rach. Like you've just enforced a tough boundary and they hated it and they may have said you're the worst dad or mum in the world, right? And then 10 minutes later, they're cuddling into you.
Why is that? Because they're drawn to the security that they feel from you?
Yeah.
That kind of feeling of a rock, feeling like safe because of some strength?
Yeah. Because you see, it's not like you hold grudges. You do the boundary and then you're normal again. So when they come to you, they're thinking, is this person who set this boundary, that's my dad or that's my mom, you know? I want to know that I'm safe around them. So they'll probably get close to you and then you're loving them and then they're grateful. So it's kind of like, and so they're learning to separate their behavior and consequences and your love for them. Isn't that a wonderful thing? That they're starting to realize that, right, so it really is just about my behavior. And I never have to panic and think that when my parents are being strict with me, they're not loving me. Then respect happens. And you have to create respect. Too many soft parents struggle because their children are not respecting them. And it is awful. My heart goes out to those parents because they don't know the damage they're doing by being too soft. They're doing damage to themselves. They're doing damage to their children. And they're just scared of upsetting their children. And their children learn to run amok as a result.
I think that was a good, definitely overview of some really great pointers for parenting and creating that balance that you were talking about at the beginning.
Cool.
So let's leave it there. And I think there may be a lot of thoughts on this podcast. So please, if you'd like to comment and share your ideas, jump onto the EP7 official page and share away.
Just do your best.
Thank you.
Bye for now.
Thank you for joining us on another EP7 podcast. If you liked what you heard, remember to share and subscribe so you're notified of every podcast released. If you have any questions or would like to connect with us, please jump on the EP7 official Facebook page. We'd love to hear from you.